want to welcome everyone out to Virtual Exchange for ModX. I'm Ryan Smith, and I'm joined with Ivan Rupnik, founding partner also with ModX, and Tom Hardiman. Tom is Executive Director for the Modular Building Institute and also Executive Director for the Modular Home Builders Association. He represents the modular industry, and we're excited about having him today because we can talk through some of the things that are currently going on and what are the plans for Tom's organizations moving forward, and what has he been working on to grow the modular industry, and also what's being done for the future amidst some of the turmoil we're all experiencing. So thank you, Tom, for coming.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ryan and Ivan, for having me this morning.
We're going to run through a few questions, and I will start off by handing it to Ivan. Ivan, go right ahead.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Tom. We wanted to start with a topic and a question related to terminology. So one of the key roles of MBI in advocating for modular construction has been clarifying what modular construction actually is. And so the term PMC, or permanent modular construction, has been the term that MBI has used to distinguish that form of construction from manufactured housing or hard code homes, also from relocatables, as well as from the residential side of modular construction. But recently there's been groups, the McKenzie Reports, have used the term in a slightly different way, and we actually are seeing something we can come back to. HUD is doing its own exploratory study about what modular construction, manufactured construction, factory-built construction, what does that mean? What are going to be some new terms? So it'd be good to hear from you how MBI positions that term and how it continues to see value in that clarity.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. This chart that's on the screen now, we put together for the modular home industry, and really it was a chart to demonstrate the advantages of modular homes, and I'll explain what we mean by that in a moment. You know, for far too often we've tried to distinguish ourselves from HUD code. And what this chart says is that modular homes are not only a better alternative than HUD code, but they're better than site-built as well. We want to start saying this is the preferred way you should be building, not just HUD or modular, but across the board. And this was just a quick chart to show that if you want a very low-cost home, quote, affordable housing, then the HUD code manufactured home is going to be the choice. It's always going to be the cheapest option out there. But if you want to get into things like durability, energy efficiency, you know, less zoning restrictions, things of that nature, then maybe a modular home is more preferable. What we mean by modular is what we've always meant is three-dimensional volumetric modules or boxes, factory built, transported to the site, and then installed on site. You're right, the terminology has been it's been a challenge, to say the least. Everyone kind of gloms onto the terms prefab and offsite and modular and interchanges those. But you know, MBI, Modular Building Institute, we've been around since 1983, and we've been consistent in how we apply it. Three-dimensional volumetric boxes.
Mm-hmm. So maybe just as a follow-up question, so the McKenzie Report, for example, they use the term modular to describe two forms of construction, volumetric or three-dimensional modular, and they've also referred to panelized as modular.
Right.
And they don't really clarify that so much, but for Ryan and myself, the way we understand it is that they understand modular to be a closed system. So all the components are predetermined, pre-designed for a specific use. So, you know, roof trusses are prefabricated off-site. They are not modular in the sense that they're not a closed system. They're an open system. Or HVAC assemblies are an open system, and they're using it as a closed system. So we're seeing that when we're speaking to a tech company or building products company or even HUD, they're starting to use that terminology that the McKenzie Report. It's a very popular report. A lot of people read it. That terminology seems to be sticking. So when Katerra talks about their panelized product and Tekra or Bensonwood, they're starting to use the word modular because McKenzie used the word modular. How will you respond to that now that that's kind of out in the world?
No, that's a great point. And first of all, the McKenzie Report was fantastic. You know, we loved it. We published it on our site. We helped them with some of the data. I think a lot of what's driving this are these state administrative programs, how these modules or panels get inspected. You know, these closed systems that you referred to, they're hard to inspect once they're on site. So there has to be a process in place to inspect them in the factories while they're being constructed. And that kind of pulls together the three-dimensional modules we were talking about with the two-dimensional panels, the closed systems. Many of those state programs include both a modular and a panel. Anything really that's difficult to inspect on site without destructive, without tearing the drywall off to look at the wiring or the plumbing. Those are considered closed systems and generally fall into the state administrative programs. Of the 35 programs, inconsistencies across the board in terms of what they call us: industrialized buildings, manufactured buildings. So the terminology is still a problem, but we have penalized members in MBI mainly because they're going through the same administrative programs that we are advocating and lobbying and building those relationships for. So it makes sense that if they have to go through those same processes that we're working on and trying to standardize, that they should be part of this effort.
Wait, just to follow up on that, so you have members from this community who've described a similar regulatory framework that you're working under, which is really great. We happen to be involved as sort of outside consultants in HUD's initiative right now to look at what they should even call what used to be called factory built construction. What would be your advice to HUD?
Oh boy. Well, I've got some issues with our friends at HUD. They just, well, yes, they recently put some comments out for public comment, and we did provide some commentary there. It's not so much HUD, but the manufactured housing industry itself has created this, I'll call it a hybrid project, and they're referring to it as a CrossMod, which just absolutely drives me nuts. It's call it anything else but a mod. It's built to the HUD code. It's a manufactured home. The fact that they want to kind of upgrade it and call it a mod, I think, is just going to add to the confusion for everybody. It's, what is a modular home now? Is it part HUD, part IRC? Is it this hybrid? So we're really opposed to that terminology, applying the word mod to a HUD code product. Beyond that, we understand the need for manufactured housing. It's provided a huge role in decent housing for a lot of people. So we want that to continue. We want the financing to be available. We just do not like the terminology CrossMod being applied to a HUD code product. We don't think it's fair. We think it's going to mislead the public, confuse the public. So we just want to draw that line to say, it's a manufactured home. I think they're using MH Advantage, choice, whatever they want to call it. Just don't call it a modular home or a mod. That's our beef, if you will, with HUD.
No, it's really helpful, Tom. And there will continue to be clarifications, and we appreciate MBI and MHBA's role in trying to make those delineations, clarifications, and terminology. To another topic, Ivan and I, some years ago, engaged with MBI, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to have worked on a study that was to try and grow the modular industry by 5% in 5 years. 5% of the total construction industry in 5 years.
Right.
And we produced a report related to that. And MBI was very integral in all of that research, and it was, we felt, a really good partnership. Coming out of that, there were a number of things that were discovered or found in that study. I share this now up on the screen. And we talk about 4 pillars that we all felt at the time were needed in order to grow the modular sector. Data, partners, standards, and really building the capability and the capacity of the modular manufacturers themselves. So I just thought I'd ask you, what has MBI done since this time? What are you currently doing in order to try to hit some of these pillars, and just talk through that a little bit. So, the floor is yours if you'd like to talk about what MBI is doing.
Sure. And, I can't believe it's been 5 years and really longer since we've been working with you and Ivan on this industry growth initiative. This chart you're showing, it was I guess, the summary of your study to our industry saying, if you want to grow this industry beyond where it is, here's the things you need to focus on. And we took your report and really made that our business plan over 5 years. I mean, we've made this, our kind of our marching order. We want to grow the industry, and I think at the time we were about a little under 2.5% of new construction starts in North America. So it was a pretty small industry. We have, and we'll touch on some of these boxes here in a minute as to what we're doing. The year in 2019 would have been end of year 5 for this report. So the 5-year part, we didn't quite get to 5%. I'm still working on finalizing the 2019 year-end data. Normally by this time I have it almost done, but I got a little sidetracked this last month, as you might imagine. But I think we're somewhere in the mid 4s, 4.5%. So we've gone from 2.5%, nearly doubled the market share in 5 years, which again, less than 5% doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you say you've doubled the market share in 5 years, that's pretty significant for any industry.
Absolutely.
The great thing about it is I think we're just now starting to gain traction and just now really hitting on some of these points on your screen here. The data, we've been very intentional about the need to get more and better data into the hands of potential end users, developers, architects, government agencies. There is just this, everyone is just starving for data on this industry, and it's hard to get your hands around. But we're doing a couple things there to really enhance our collection efforts. We've hired, outside resources to go help us gather it, which is one of the challenging parts, is just getting your hands on it. So we have some help there. What we've done is we have a database, a project database at MBI, and through that, our members enter their buildings. They enter things like the markets and square footage and days to complete. We ask for their cost data. We are taking the last 10 years worth of projects, analyzing that information and trying to incorporate and glean information from it. We have over 1,000 modular projects in that database right now, and we get about 100, 125 added to it each year. So as that information comes in, we can segregate it by market, hospitality, multifamily, healthcare, days to complete, square footage, and build that into our annual reports. That information, our goal is June 1st is to have this accessible project database that our members can log into and search, sort and search 1,000 modular projects, sort them out, show me all the healthcare facilities built in the last 5 years, and a list will come up, and they'll have case studies on that. So we're close to finishing that. We should have that in the next few months.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be big, I think. To go to one place and say, here's 1,000 modular projects, I don't know that it exists anywhere else. So we're excited to be able to pull that together and to be able to add, 100, 150 a year to that, keep it current at all times.
That's great.
Standards, I'm not sure when you all proposed this, if you were focusing more on product standards. I see the P's there, process, products, and procedures. I think we've done a little less in terms of product standards, but in terms of process standards, I think we've made some good headway. We're currently working on 3 different standards, 2 with the International Code Council and 1 with Canada Standards Agency for the modular industry simultaneously. So, I don't know if you've ever worked on an industry standard. It can be a bit of a beast in and of itself, but to do 3 of them at once is just a bit overwhelming. But we wanted to be part of all of these because we know it's really going to yield benefits, down the line when these standards are finished and, more importantly, are, widely adopted. One of those standards with the ICC, we'll touch on what, I mentioned to Ivan. There's 35 state programs in the U.S. on ways to review and approve a modular building, quality control manuals, how many times do the units have to be inspected, so forth, terminology. This is going to come up with one ICC ANSI standard way to review and approve modular buildings. And again, I say modular, but it's going to be closed construction. Wall panels will be included. Tiny homes will be included. So there will be one ICC ANSI standard way to do this. That's step one. Step two is getting the states to adopt it and use that standard, which is, again, this is a long-term game here, but these are things that are going to ultimately help the industry. And then real quick, in Canada, the standard we're working on, it started off to be a standard for high-rise modular buildings. And that's kind of morphed a little bit because what we found is nobody has a real clear definition of what high-rise means. Is that 3 stories or 30 or so we kind of scaled it back to say, let's come up with just some basic information about modular buildings, multi-story, early stages of that standards meeting, but excited to be part of 3 standards that are currently under development for the modular industry.
That's great. Yeah, that's very exciting. And in your efforts related to this, certainly on this chart, you've had to forge, new partnerships and solidify existing partnerships with a multitude of entities so that consensus process can move forward, which has been very impressive to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. In the partners box, we've made a lot of headway there as well. In addition to the standards, we realized that everything about the construction industry, absolutely everything, was written for a site-built world. From the procurement process, from insurance, from financing, from the OSHA regs, everything was written assuming it was going to be built on site. So we have gone back and really broke that down and tried to address every piece of that. We're working with AGC, Associated General Contractors. Just had a call yesterday, actually, finalizing a consensus doc. What if a general contractor wants to sub out to a modular manufacturer? There's no contract for that. There's no industry contract. There will be. We're almost done with that. So that'll be
great.
One template contract that'll be in place specific for modular construction. AIA, architects, we worked with AIA, and they developed a guideline for architects for modular construction and published that about a year ago. But that's a huge resource, not only for architects, but for our industry to say, this came from AIA to architects. And it's kind of the pros and cons of, how do I design for a modular project? So that was a really big step. The financing piece has been a big problem because financing a modular project, the cash flow profile looks a little different than a traditional project. There's a little more money needed up front, but it's a shorter construction schedule, quicker occupancy, things like that. We're working with Fannie Mae, and I just heard yesterday they're about to finalize their document on financing modular projects. That'll go out to the entire lending community, hopefully by the end of April. And it'll just be a resource from Fannie Mae to lenders about the differences in financing a modular project. So rather than MBI, the trade association, putting out publications and white papers and products that, tout the benefits of modular, which that's what we do, this is a way for us to work with these other partners or organizations to say, you put this out to your members under your heading, and we think it'll have a little more clout, and we'll help you write these resources. So we're really excited about all of those.
That's great, Tom. Do you want to talk a little bit about your partnership with McGraw-Hill Dodge Data and the recent report that's come out?
Yeah, that was a fantastic report. I think it was 2010 or 2011 that McGraw-Hill did their first smart market report. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were involved in that one as well. It seems like you've been involved in all of these with us, Ryan. And that was a good report. It kind of laid the groundwork saying, here's the modular industry, and I'm using my air quotes on that because I think even McGraw-Hill had a different notion of what they were they were asking at the time. They considered anything prefab, industrialized to be in that report. This particular report that came out by Dodge this past year, we've got that posted on our website. It's a free resource. Anyone can download it on our website. It specifically focuses on modular, volumetric modular construction, permanent modular construction. So when they asked these survey questions, it kind of funneled the respondents. And if you said, I only build single family homes, it kind of funneled you out of the rest of the survey. Or I build, only 10% of what I do is modular, it funneled you out. So it asked questions to architects, owners, contractors that have some experience with modular. Results were phenomenal. High 80%, 90% in terms of 7 key metrics on how modular improves their project: cost, time, schedule, safety, efficiency, just down the line. It's a slam dunk report for our industry. And again, it's one that has a lot of third-party credibility because Dodge put it out as their smart market report. So that's a great one.
Yeah. No, and we really appreciate that report. I am seeing it being quoted quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I'm hoping it does help to to increase the uptake in the industry continuously, especially with developers who are looking to leverage modular construction. So, one more box here on this diagram is the competence, capacity, and capability of the modular builders themselves, and those stakeholders that realize these projects. The architects, the code officials, etc. Anything you want to say about those 3 C's and what MBI is doing there?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, those 3 C's really came to light this last month. We've had a lot of calls and inquiries from U.S. Corps of Engineers, FEMA. What is your industry capacity? Who can build these buildings we need? This last 4 or 5 weeks has felt like a bit of a sprint, as everyone's trying to figure out what the needs are, where the needs are, how can we position our industry to help. The one thing the modular industry is great at is providing space quickly, and that seems to be a pretty big need right now. But it gets back to our point of there are no real standard products or processes, so it's been difficult to match up. Here's our industry with what your needs are, when that seems to be a moving target day by day on the government side. But we've surveyed our own members at the beginning of this crisis as to their capacity to build. What if the Corps or FEMA says we need 10,000 ICU rooms? Can we do it? And what we're finding is the answer is yes, if we have a standard product and a standard design, and someone's in charge of, who's paying for this? Who's the contract coming from? And those are questions that are still yet to be answered. But capacity, competence, I'll say this: we've been encouraging our members to be very transparent about what they're doing in this crisis. It's real easy to, if you have 100 relocatable buildings in your fleet that are available, to say, I can call these medical or healthcare buildings and lease them. Don't do that. These were not designed or built for healthcare needs. Just be transparent with whoever you're leasing or selling these to say, this was designed as an office or a classroom even. It can be converted for quick temporary use, but it's not a healthcare facility.
Right.
So we're trying to just really hammer that message home to, don't oversell something. Don't tell someone you can build them a permanent hospital in 10 days like they did in China. It's just not realistic. Let's help, but let's be transparent, and let's be honest about what our competency and capability and capacity really is. I've been overwhelmed by the feedback we're getting from our industry in terms of, here's our input, here's what we can do, how can we help? And not just the manufacturers, on down the supply chain line with the material suppliers and service providers and engineers and architects, just all jumping in saying, how can we help? So it gets all these circles, as you designed it this way, they're kind of interconnected. That gets back to giving us better data that we can share, that helps us with our standards, that helps us with our partners. So all these are definitely intertwined.
That's great. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, Ivan, do you want to ask any additional questions about what's currently going on?
Yeah, actually, just on a little bit on the three, just back on the 3Cs, I think it was very clear, in the way you described the other three parts of the circle, that MBI has a very clear role in those. And in 3Cs, it seems like MBI's approach has been to let the members lead and to support the members, which is, and maybe that's a strategy. What we've seen though is, and again, we've seen some of the established members in PMC a little bit resistant to increasing the 3Cs, but we've also seen MBI being very successful at attracting the newer players who seem to be more comfortable with 3C risk. Maybe maybe you could speak to that a little bit. Again, MBI is in both. It's really impressive to see. You continue to provide a service to your existing membership base, but you've also, especially in the last 5 years that we've been involved, we've seen a real growth, not just in numbers, but in, for lack of a better word, impact. Really high quality, high profile players are really coming to MBI and seeing it as a role. But those folks are, let's say, a little bit more proactive in the 3Cs. Some of the established members for good reason. It's been a tough 30 years of being in this industry without that kind of growth. Maybe you could speak to that kind of difference.
Yeah, and before we launch this initiative with you guys, this industry has been around a long time, and there's very successful companies in this industry that have done very well for themselves. When we started, I was thinking everyone's going to line up and just be on board with this, and they're going to change their business plans, and we're all just going to be going down the same path. It didn't take too long for me to realize, who am I to tell a successful family-owned business that's doing $50 million a year that they need to change the way they're doing business because it doesn't fit our model here. So those companies are going to have to make their own decisions as to should they invest more in technology and innovation and automation even, or are they quite happy and content and comfortable where they are? There are risks associated with, for every piece of equipment you buy, that's overhead. Do I have the volume to cover it? Those types of conversations are happening internally. That said, we're seeing a lot of newer factories come online over the last 3, 4, 5 years who, starting off, they seem to be a little more automated or innovative to some degree. Our position is pretty simple. If you're in this industry, we want you to be part of this association. We don't care if you're, been around 100 years and it's basically off-site construction, or if you're the most automated factory out there. If you're earning a living or making revenue in the modular construction industry, we're advocating on your behalf and we're marketing on your behalf. We need your help. We want you on board with us. The thing I think has really been interesting is when we created these regional councils, this Canadian council, this European council, and now a South American council, the sharing of best practices globally has been phenomenal. We're getting our European companies that'll come to our conference and say, here's how we do things in Poland, for example, or in England, or here's how we do it in Brazil. I think that's just really helped the learning curve. And maybe, companies aren't going to go back and change everything, but they'll take bits and pieces of what they're hearing and implement it into their plans. So you're right. Sometimes I think my theme song should be, I Walk the Line by Johnny Cash, because I've got a lot of different constituents, even within this modular world. And we have to be a little careful as a trade association made up of a bunch of competitors not to do anything that might impede the competition or price fixing or product fixing. Anything that could be construed anti-competitive, we have to back away from. So we have to some degree say, if there's these companies that want to form together and address this as individual companies, go for it. We support you, but we can't endorse that, if you follow me. So we kind of have to provide the information that we think is the best information and let those companies make their best decisions on what works for them. So that's kind of how we see our role. We're the information source. We'll put it out there. We'll encourage people, but they're going to have to go down that path themselves or not go down that path.
That seems like a good transition also into another topic, which is both the current COVID response, which we touched on, but also kind of the future of the industry. So the COVID response, again, it's been discussed a good bit. Modular companies and modular coalitions have had a big role already. It's a natural fit. You've also alluded to the fact a little bit, maybe speak to it, that there is a kind of, for the modular industry, it's a bit of a delicate, again, walking on the line between providing of a solution, but also not wanting to be associated with something that's just cheap and fast. But PMC is permanent modular construction. It is not a relocatable. It's not a trailer home. It's a permanent form of construction. And so sometimes there's a misfit between rapid response on the one hand and the actual qualities of this as a form of permanent construction. But what do you see? What do you see as are there things you're already seeing in terms of the COVID response that are changing the industry? For one thing, we've seen again is more sharing, as you've alluded to. And what do you see as obviously what we're certain about in the near-term future is not just COVID response, but a significant economic downturn. And how are modular companies changing through this experience, and how are they maybe preparing for what may be a leaner short-term or midterm future?
Yeah, great question. Lots to unpack there. So MBI does represent really two segments of the modular industry, and that's that relocatable fleet side of the business. That's more of a financial lease fleet component, if you will, and then the permanent modular construction. The great thing about MBI is when a crisis like this happens, we can bring all those solutions to the table. We know you need space right away. Here's our fleet companies. They've got thousands of buildings right now in inventory. They're better than tents in parking lots. These are, IBC structures. They can be anchored. You saw what happened in the South with as soon as these tornadoes come through. Gosh, if there's tents in parking lots, that's just terrible. So we can provide those quick temporary solutions on the front end, and that's happening, and we're seeing that play out. But our focus really, not just for this crisis, because hopefully this crisis will be over in a month or two, is that mid and long term, how do we position the modular industry going forward? We knew before this COVID crisis that we have major infrastructure problems in this country and really globally. Housing. Obviously, healthcare has been exposed as needing, let's say, a shot in the arm in terms of infrastructure. Educational facilities across the country, we know those need to be addressed. So those big three, housing, healthcare, education, those have to be addressed before this crisis hit. You couple that with, we've all heard about the labor shortages in the traditional construction industry, the skilled trades, that number's shrinking. How are we going to build everything that needs to be built with less labor on site? I'm a little biased. I've been doing this for about 17 years. All roads point to some form of industrializing our construction process. We have to. There's no other choice. So that to me says this industry, more than the traditional construction industry, is poised to grow, is poised to explode. And I think we're starting to see a lot of signs of traditional GCs saying, how can I weather the storm? Maybe I need to add a modular component to my portfolio as a way to. So it's impacted our industry, obviously. We've had factories shut down. We've had builders, sent home. We've had suppliers shut down. But I think on at least the commercial side, it's impacted us a little less so than other industries, obviously. I don't want to say we've been unscathed because a lot of our members have really been significantly hurt by this. But I think we're better positioned to be able to scale back and scale up than maybe a traditional GC might be. And I think those are, things we're all learning as we go through this is, okay, we might have to have more virtual meetings. We might need to work from home a little more. My team of 10, I think this is week 5. I might be losing my mind here, but week 5 of working from home for all of us. And we're, instant messaging and having Zoom meetings. So it's a bit of a learning process for some of us older folks, but we're learning it. We're getting through it. It's a pretty resilient group we represent, and a lot of smart business people in our industry. And I think we'll we'll get through this. I know we'll get through this, and we'll be stronger for it on the back end. I don't know if I answered your question at all. I just started rambling there.
No, it's good. It's really good. You know, and I know the modular industry has has experienced economic downturns in the past as well. So this is not necessarily new, but this particular one was sort of unseen, right? It sort of came in from left field, which so you know, our heart goes out to all those companies, and we you know, who have been partners over the years, and just hope that we can get out of this this situation as quickly as we can.
Absolutely.
Tom,
I think, you know, we're obviously some areas have been really hit hard. We've got members and friends in New York who are just devastated. You know, they're not only going through, they're losing friends and family members. I mean, this really, it's the same thing in Washington. You guys have been hit very hard. I do think, fortunately, a lot of the rest of the country is taking the advice of staying home, social distancing, scaling back, you know, and I hope that's going to make this less severe than we originally thought. But yeah, hopefully we'll get through this next month or so, 2 months. I'm not sure anything will ever get back to quote normal, but maybe some degree of normalcy, you know, in the next few months.
Yeah, and one of the things, just to close, you know, the call out here, and thank you for coming. I wanted to just reiterate to everyone is that, you know, Ivan and I certainly are, you know, consultants in the space. We're also academics, and so we like to ask the hard questions. And after really looking hard and fast at, you know, how COVID-19 might impact and is impacting the construction industry, and what the new normal might be in construction, certainly off-site solutions, in particular modular, and pulling operations in the factory has been demonstrated to be a labor productivity measure. You can control your distance. You can control the spread of infection much more easily. So I think it makes sense in that climate as well.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to touch on that. We had a call with our Canadian council last week, and we asked just how they're doing. Are they open? Are they functioning? I was just overwhelmed at how many of the manufacturers just sent us their plans and said, share this with our other Canadian members. Here's what our factory is doing. First and foremost, their focus is keep their employees safe. That's at the top of everyone's list. We got to keep our people safe. We're not going to rush everyone back in just because we're chasing a buck. We've got to keep our people safe. We've had some factories that the states have said you're allowed to open, and they have still chosen to say we're not going to do it yet, or we're going to phase this back in. We're going to bring in, you know, 20% of the staff first, and so that we can be sure about this. So it's really good to hear that our members are seriously concerned about their workers' safety first and foremost. We have a lot of those plans available. If someone would like to know what some factories are doing, we could share that with you.
Tom, any closing comments for us on this call? Anything you want to finish with?
Well, we didn't really touch on our relationship that you brought me into several years ago with the National Institute of Building Sciences. I'm currently the chair of the Off-Site Construction Council, and that's really a group that's a little broader than our trade association. It brings in academics, government agencies, contractors. It brings in everyone as a think tank, so to speak, at the federal level. We obviously missed our April meeting, which was scheduled to happen, but I think they've pushed it back to fall. Still an opportunity for anyone interested in this space to be involved in the NIBS Offsite Construction Council. It's a very low membership fee a year, and we encourage you to jump on that. MBI, we're going to keep doing our events. We're looking at our, we were extremely fortunate. We had a World of Modular conference in early March. Mm-hmm. And it ended on a Thursday, and Monday everything was shut down. Everyone came home safe, no indications of anyone being sick. So we're extremely fortunate to get that one behind us. But we're planning next year's conference, and we're going to have some off-site construction events coming up over the next year. 3, I believe, regional events across the country. Actually, one's in Toronto, Denver, and DC. But we'll put all that on our calendar of events. You know, we want to be viewed as the source of information for the modular construction industry. Residential on the modular home builders side, commercial, MBI. So if anyone has any questions about modular construction, they can come to us.
That's great. That's great. We really appreciate your partnership with ModX and these knowledge exchange trips that we take abroad. It's been a good partnership, and
Absolutely.
just really appreciate that. Yeah. Ivan, do you want to add anything to that before, here at the end of the call?
Yeah, I just wanted to, applaud Tom's long-term strategy and really thinking about, the future of modular, not just as a immediate response, but as, really developing a kind of quality brand. And again, not just from the perspective of construction, but also, as you pointed out, that modular businesses tend to be more responsible to their employees. That's a point that I just wanted to reiterate. Something, is very successful. Polina Liedlow, who was a keynote at MBI World of Modular this year, somebody's always repeated that's been a difference between successful companies abroad. It's just a no-brainer. If labor is an issue, it's not just about less folks and more machines. It's about those folks and those factors really feeling taken care of. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that point that Tom made at the end is a very positive one in the situation we're in. And these are really responsible companies now that have made a serious investment in the people that they work with. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that's really what that's, if nothing else comes out of this, just that focus of we've got to take care of our people. That will strengthen us, that alone.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to everyone for joining. Appreciate Tom Hardiman, Executive Director for Modular Building Institute and MHBA Modular Home Builders Association. Thanks for your time, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.